Hello and welcome to Bell Direct's Meet the Analyst series. I'm Grady Wulff, Senior Market Analyst with Bell Direct. Today I'm thrilled to be talking about the red hot defence sector. We've seen stocks in the space really soar this year, and over the last 12 months a lot of countries around the world are bolstering their spend in this space amid rising geopolitical tensions, and there's no one better to talk about it than Daniel Laing, the Bell Potter Industrials Analyst. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you recently brought out a piece on the defence sector explaining the increase in defence spend, what it means for our listed sector and stocks. Can you dive into the key highlights of that piece, please?
Yeah, so the defence debrief was the first of what will be a kind of regular defence sector note. We just wanted to highlight, the increased geopolitical risks that are going on at the moment, how that's driving that increased spending and how that's kind of flown through to that increased expenditure that we've seen globally.
Absolutely. Now, drones have become a staple in the defence game, and they've really changed up how defence is delivered right now, both in terms of software and hardware and also in the war zones that we've seen. So how do you see this really changing the game in terms of defence spend, and are countries falling behind if they're not spending on drones?
Yeah, so drones have added an interesting variable because it kind of comes down to the economics where you've had these $1,002 drones blowing up tanks and planes that are worth tens of millions of dollars. So they call it asymmetric warfare, and if the economics don't stack up, it's not really sustainable. So that's where it's interesting for your companies like DroneShield and EOS, where they can kind of come through and provide that, effective counter drone solution, but at a lower cost. So that's where they come to the foray. But how that flows through, I guess, into the defense spending side of things. Drones and counter drones, lower cost technology, but it's quite in high volumes. And a lot of militaries and countries around the world don't actually possess this technology in high quantities yet. So we're really going to start to see that flow through, and that's where, drones are driving that spending as well.
Now, you do cover DroneShield and EOS at the moment. What are you liking about the tailwinds for them?
Yeah, so as I was just saying, with what drones are doing globally, they're really benefiting from that. DroneShield's had a really, exciting 12 months. We've been covering it since late 2022, but with all the tailwinds, it's really found its feet over the last 12 months. We saw last year, it did about $57 million in revenue over calendar year 24. And, 6 months through the calendar year this year, they've already secured $170 million to be delivered this year. So they're really starting to hit their straps, and that's very exciting. EOS, is probably one kind of where DroneShield was maybe 12, 18 months ago. It's still looking to grow that order book, but it's got a really exciting technology that we can see, playing out over the next couple of years. So, they're two that are in very exciting spots.
Now, obviously, it's a global scale for the defence sector. Which countries are at the forefront of defence spend that you're seeing growth in for these kind of stocks, and which ones are falling behind?
Yeah, so the US accounts for about a third of global defence spending. That's about 3 times more than second place China, followed by Russia. I think also if you look at Europe, we're talking about these, increasing defense expenditure. Germany and Poland have really led the way on these new commitments that we've seen come through. Germany spent about another 28% last year to move into 4th place, and Poland has really ramped up, and they're already spending about 4.2% of GDP, which is we've seen recently with the new NATO target of 5%. So Poland's well on the way there. On the flip side, there's a bit of pressure on Australia from the US. The US would like Australia to be spending about 3.5% of GDP on defence. We're set to spend about 2% next year, and with a commitment to grow that to 2.4% in 2033, 2034. So the pressure is there, but, it can be difficult to find the money in the budget to fund that defence expenditure.
Absolutely. Now, what risks are there to the growth of this sector?
Yeah, ultimately, as we kind of outlined in the note, we don't think the geopolitical risks are going away, so the demand's going to be there. So the key risk for the growth is probably in budgets, whether countries can actually afford to back up the expenditure or the commitments they've made, like similar to with NATO, where they've made that 5% target. So, if there's economic downturn, or if we see global shocks such as COVID, where countries need to allocate more funding towards fiscal stimulus and away from defence, that's probably the key risk you're looking at, is really those budgets.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, investors obviously looking to gain exposure to the space. Some may think it's overdone and they've peaked, but what are your thoughts on this, and where can they gain exposure directly or indirectly?
Yeah, look, we definitely think there's still a way to go. These expenditure commitments are to be fulfilled over the next decade. The risks aren't going away. So we're still confident in the sector as a whole. Looking directly, we touched on DroneShield and EOS, which are our two key picks in the space. And I would also point to Austell, which is one of our key picks. We've recently come back to a hold, but that's been a really strong performer. Looking for a more diversified option, there are good ETFs out there that have performed very strongly over the last 12 months. A lot of them launched last year. So you're looking at probably the VanEck and the BetaShares ETFs, are two which we believe are quite good. So there are different ways to, play the sector.
So what's your outlook for the defence sector? Obviously very bullish on it, but for how long? And how does this kind of play into your strategic coverage of the companies? Yeah,
so again, bullish on the sector. If we look over the last couple of years, global defence expenditure grew about 11%. On average, over the last 5 years, it's been 7.5%, and we expect that to continue over the next... This is a long-term thematic we've kind of been looking at. So over the next decade, we expect that growth to be there. And I guess when that flows through to our coverage, the way we kind of look at it is, if you're looking at some of our coverage, say like DroneShield or even where Austell was, the valuation multiples are pretty high because there's been a lot of money flowing into the sector. But with the growth we have pushing through our forecast, those multiples come down pretty quickly, and you can be very comfortable with those valuations.
Now, on DroneShield again, you are, again, bullish on this for quite some time. They are the counter-drone technology, but they have the hardware and the software. Where do you see them going from here? Are they expanding into different countries? What's your outlook on them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of exciting things, I would say, for DroneShield. With the amount of demand and even their recent $60 million contract, which came out of Europe, they're looking to set up a manufacturing facility and tech hub in Europe. That'll also allow them to fulfill some of those local content requirements. So they'll have like 60% of local European content in the products for what's built over there. And that'll open up even more opportunities into some of those procurement programs over in Europe. In regards to the technology, they're undergoing significant R&D program at the moment. They're expecting to release new product releases in the next 12 to 18 months. So I think that'll be, really drive some more sales for the company, because we have been seeing a lot of advancement in drones. So they've got to keep up on the counter drone side to make sure their products are still effective. And then probably just the last interesting point for DroneShield is, when you're looking... They're in the defense and military space at the moment, because that civilian or commercial side hasn't really flown through yet. But I think that's going to be a major driver of growth for DroneShield going forward, when you think it's got that soft defeat technology. So if you're trying to protect civilian infrastructure, stadiums, any type of event, you can't be using a hard kill method, because there'll be collateral damage. So DroneShield is best placed to defend those sort of things. And I think that'll be a big driver of further growth for them moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, on that horizon. Now, elsewhere in the broader market, what's your outlook for FY26?
Yeah, look, markets are trading at all-time highs, but risks are still pretty prevalent. We've got Trump's tariffs coming back online in the next couple of days, and then obviously all the questions around the US debt position. But ultimately, I think when you look at defense and how it's kind of performed through that volatility at the start of the year, I think it's probably a good place to be if you're worried about some of those risks in the broader market. So that's why we're pretty bullish on this sector, and going to keep kind of pushing stuff out for investors to get them, aware of the area.
Thanks so much, Dan, for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed that episode of Meet the Analyst as much as we did filming it. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the Bell Direct YouTube channel to stay up to date with all insights, market commentary, exclusive analyst interviews, and obviously CEO interviews as well. We hope to see you soon.